Welcome to another show of Progressive Soup. I'm Mike Toto. I'm going to be host tonight, and Dave Stevenson and I are going to chat a little bit about housing, local, how the mortgage scene, and how housing has been affected by all that happened in Washington and Wall Street. And so, without further ado, here's Dave. Once again, I'm Mike, and let's talk. Dave, from a perspective of a realtor that you've been a long-time realtor, 22 years as I understand it?
Correct.
What have you seen in the last 3 or 4 years that's so different than in the past?
Well, as the market increased dramatically over the last, I'd say from about 2000 until about 2005, it crested. We found that a lot of mortgage brokers were actively trying to sell subprime mortgages to buyers that didn't need them. In fact, a lot of buyers needed them because their qualifications weren't strong, so they were reasonable candidates for those type of financial tools to buy a house. But even with buyers that were well qualified for a standard mortgage, fixed rate financing, the lenders spent a lot of time trying to sell them on the concept of the subprime mortgage for a couple of reasons. One of which was, unfortunately, that the mortgage brokers, some of them, wanted to know that in a couple of years, when the rates shifted, when the rates adjusted, the buyers would need to come back to them. And they told them, come back to me in 2 years, the rate adjusts in 2 years, and we'll refinance, you'll have more equity in your home, you can do a better mortgage at that time. And as we all know now, that's very much what did not happen. And I did actively try to talk a lot of people, and was successful in talking a lot of people into getting the more standard mortgages, particularly people that I knew would be in their home long term.
Sure.
And that's always the goal. You want to know that people are buying a home that if they move again, it'll be because they want to move, not because they feel obligated to.
How much did it mean to a lender in his pocket, say, to push the subprime rather than just a conventional mortgage? I mean, was it a lot of bucks?
Anywhere from hundreds to thousands of dollars.
Wow. Wow. And so it did matter a lot. And were there any kind of rules at all? I mean, I as a lender, was I guided by other than morals in saying whatever I wanted to say? I mean, there must be some sort of rules of the road that I had to be guided, or you had to be guided by.
Best case scenario, lenders were guiding buyers to go with the right product for them. Worst case scenario, lenders were actively coaching buyers on what to say on their loan applications.
Wow.
In order to make sure that they get the loan, even if it involved talking about income that didn't exist.
Wow. And this was to the banks, and the banks didn't ask the right questions?
Regulations were very lax at that point, as you know, as they were in all the other financial institutions that now we're finding out about. They were also lax in the lending scenario back then.
Wow. What do you think it's going to take to flush all of the houses that are obviously on the market out of the system? How long? And what do you think the end result is going to be a price reduction? I assume at some point it'll come back, but it probably will be some time. What's your best take of what you think this local market will be?
Well, I think between financing to the max and also people that bought houses years ago, taking equity lines of credit and refinancing to the max, we might have about 25% of homeowners in our area that are underwater.
Wow, that many.
And combined with the problems in the healthcare field, where a family, if they have no health insurance and a crisis of a health insurance or a crisis of a lost job,
sure,
they're one paycheck or a couple of paychecks away from losing their home. And it's happening in a lot of cases. And people that are in good financial shape, we're telling sit tight. The prices will come back. And even if you've got some other money stowed away, you can buy you can buy another, sell your house even if you lose a little money, and then buy another house if your family needs are more rooms, more space.
Sure.
You can still do that.
Sure. What do you think it's going to take to prevent this from happening once again? I mean, other than people being wary, I'm assuming the next boom cycle, people are going to forget all about what happened and on to bigger and better things. What will it take to prevent this from happening again?
Two things. A good memory on the part of people, and secondly, regulation to hammer those thoughts home to make sure that people remember. Because if you have regulations that are in place to prevent these things from happening, and it doesn't take a lot of regulations. I'm not speaking about over-regulating any industry, but the housing industry and so many other financial institutions were pretty much left to their own devices. And capitalism is a wonderful thing, and it allows our country to be strong, and it's good at its best. But when we have no regulation and people want to make as much money as they can, as fast as they can make it, and the heck with everybody else, that's capitalism, unfortunately, run amok, and that's what we've had.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to change the subject for a moment. As a retired architect, I was always interested in people buying houses and what they thought was the house for them and why. What I'd like to ask you is, what are the first, in priority, what are the first things that someone usually looks at? And I'm going to tell you something that I know, but first I'd like to hear from you.
I think a smart home buyer will look at the numbers of rooms, and they'll look at the three locations. Location within their commuting area, location within the more specific area for their local needs, and then beyond that, the third location would be location within their neighborhood, which is particularly important in a condominium, because you know, condominiums have a lot of different types of neighborhoods within neighborhoods, in terms of more privacy in some parts of a condominium, more neighborhoody feel in some parts of a condominium. But I would say that those are the two things that are most important: numbers of rooms, so you have enough rooms to match the needs of the family, and then your locations.
Okay. Getting specific, more specific into, say, the layout of the things, what do you think that most homeowners would, and let's say it's a typical homeowner, whether it be a potential condo buyer or a detached dwelling, what is the number one thing that they look for once they've determined that this is a house of about the right size for them and the right location, as you mentioned?
Well, we've been in the marketplace for a while, and we're out of that now, I believe. We've been in a marketplace where people would buy to the absolute maximum they could afford. Probably not a good move. Probably not a smart idea. I think you want to make sure when you buy that you're going to take care of your other family needs besides your living space. You want to make sure that you've got enough money so that if you need to be going out once a month or twice a month, you'll have the money to do that. You want to make sure that there'll be a nest egg set aside, because in a single family home you're going to have a certain amount of repairs that are going to be required.
Especially if it's an older place.
Even in a newer place, you know that a roof's going to last 20 years maximum. You know that you're going to have a driveway that'll wear out in a period of time. There's a lot of things, both inside the home and outside the home, that you know, that it should know in advance, that are going to come due. This is why a lot of people are buying into condominiums, because condominiums are mandated by law now in Connecticut for years to do studies of their neighborhood and their finances every 2 years, and then again every 5 years, so that the condominium won't run into a situation where they need to replace a lot of roofs or do other types of work, or a road, and not have the funds to do it, and have to assess.
Okay.
You want to make sure you've got long-term, you've got the money to match the repair needs of your condominium or your home.
In, let's say, Danbury and Bethel, what do you think the percentage of condos versus detached dwellings
that you deal with and what most brokers do? Do you have any idea? Is it 50-50? Is it 25 condos and 75 detached? Or, and rental units, I guess, also comes into play.
It pretty much matches up with a national norm. About 35% of Americans live in condominiums.
I didn't realize it was that high.
I'd say that's a pretty fair match with what we have in Fairfield County. And I would say because of that's about the percentage of buyers that are looking. Although I say the young people that have come to me in the last 5-10 years, a lot of them specifically only want to look at condominiums because they like the lifestyle. 10-15 years ago, people would buy a condominium if they couldn't afford a house. Now people are buying a condominium because they like the lifestyle. And that's reflective in more being built.
And the prices, seem to be almost the same.
Pretty comparable.
Yeah,
square foot for square foot. Pretty comparable. Not a huge difference as there once was.
Okay. As an architect, I was always told that a wife usually looks at the kitchen. That the man usually looks at the garage or place, a study, or a place to do a workshop or something like that. What's your feeling as far as what, or is it run the gamut?
Runs the gamut. That's all changed.
It's all changed.
That's all changed. I think
number of closets.
I think couples are looking more than they used to as a team.
Okay.
They're looking at they're all asking the one asks the other one about every item on their checklist, on their must-have list, on their things that they'd like to have. They share their thoughts, and it's very much a team effort now.
Okay. Let's talk about home inspection. Okay. Let's say you are representing a seller. Okay. Do you advise the seller to get the home inspection, or wait until the buyer comes on and then he gets the home inspection?
If there's something glaring, if there's something that stands out as being an issue, oil tank in the ground, a roof that's clearly near the end of its useful life, something that's glaring, probably a good idea for a seller to take care of that in advance, or take care of the problem. But at least to put all the information on the table for prospective buyers. Yeah.
Okay.
Buyers, of course, always need to do an inspection.
It's not mandated by law, is it? No.
No.
Okay. You don't need to do that.
No.
What are the mandates, if any, that the state or the local communities require of a seller or a buyer? Are there any?
Yeah. Lenders require tests for
potable water.
They require tests for the for insects. So
termite.
Termite inspection, termite or carpenter ants, things of that nature.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
you do need one.
Lenders require that. Potable water in some cases, yep.
Okay.
Radon has not become an issue yet, particularly in Connecticut, because Connecticut doesn't have a lot of granite-bearing rock under the ground.
Not in my house, but it's okay.
Yeah, it's not as prevalent as there are in some, like New Jersey has a tremendous amount of radon under the ground. Still good to do a radon test because you never know where you'll find it.
Right.
Because we can't see under the ground.
That's true.
Without some sort of measurement, we won't know whether.
What does a normal inspection cost? Say for a 3-bedroom condo or a 3-bedroom house?
Anywhere from $400 to $700, I would say.
Okay.
Covers most of them.
Okay. Do you recommend to the prospective buyer or seller people that are in the business, or do you give them a list and say, hey, go pick it and choose?
A lot of names for them to do their shopping, the same way as that they would do their shopping for their home loan.
Okay.
We give them a number of options, and then they do their due diligence after that, and I give them some questions they need to ask in order to help determine who's best qualified. And then they match that up against the cost and find which fits their needs best.
Understand. Well, it's been very, very interesting so far, and pretty soon, as I understand, we're going to have another segment of the show, but right now we're going to break for a PSA.
I learned how to use a video switcher.
That's the PSA?
I learned how to use a soundboard.
Okay.
I learned learned how to use an editor.
How was your time so far?
I learned how to do graphics.
We learned how to operate all this equipment
Can we
to
talk
make our
about
own
architectural
television shows.
style?
And you can too.
Sure.
Come on down to Comcast Cable, Community Access Channel 23, or call 792-1265 to find out more.
Okay. Welcome back. This is David Stevenson, and I'm Mike Toto, and we're talking about housing, both on a macro level, the recent mortgage crisis, as well as local, Bethel, Danbury, and confines. Asking some questions of Dave, who's a longtime realtor, and I, as a retired architect, have a little in common. Let's get right into it again. Dave, you were about to turn the tables on me and ask me about styles, and I'm going to ask you first about styles and what most people look for. Is it colonial? Is it, you know, architects? I grew up in the 60s, or at least I was, grew up and educated in the 50s and 60s, and so it was modern architecture. And we had a big, big nut to crack, and that was to change people's minds from colonial to more modern or contemporary style. I don't think we ever won the battle, but at least that was what the way my style of architecture. But anyway, getting back to what the normal home buyer or home buyer will look for, what do you think they're looking for?
Well, 20 years ago, I would say, and perhaps that's true to some degree still, that the colonial style, a two-story home, is the most popular style, was the most popular style, has lost some of that cachet, but still is probably the most popular style. Although many people, as our population ages, and myself included, as I just turned 55 last year.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm not telling you how old I am.
I know that, but I won't ask you. But I do know how old.
Okay.
But the single, the one-level home has become much more popular. And probably rightly so, not just for people that need one level because they're not as mobile as they once were, but one level serves a lot of good purposes for a young family too, where small children are maybe better suited in terms of learning to walk, etc., to being on one level.
Does that hold true in condos as well, or
Yep.
is it more a townhouse type where the bedrooms are on a different level than everything else? It's always seemed to me that that's the one that commands the highest number or whatever it is, a townhouse, rather than a little flat where you have somebody above you or below you or whatever it is. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Depends upon the quality of noise reduction and quantity of noise reduction in the neighborhood. They build them pretty well, so you especially the more recent architecture obviously has much more sound dimming qualities within the construction. So as long as you've got good sound reduction qualities in a building, having someone above you or someone below you should not be an issue for most people. So again, it pretty much plays out the same way.
How about pets? What percentage of condos allow pets? I guess it runs the gamut. I mean, obviously you can have goldfish, and maybe some places agree with small cats or cats that don't go out, but obviously there are dogs and other exotic pets.
A lot of them restrict the numbers of pets,
Aha.
particularly dogs, to one.
Okay.
Oh, some of them restrict the size of a pet.
Is that right?
The size of a dog.
Wow.
Not so, let's say if you have a 25-pound limit, for instance. That's not so that if you have a dog that weighs 26 pounds or 28 pounds.
It's just relative size.
It gives the association a little bit of a leverage if somebody has a 125-pound dog.
True. Do you often come up to that, of saying right off the bat, hey, these people, they don't allow dogs. So if you have a dog, you're out.
Condominiums are allowed to do that. Condominiums do have that power to regulate pets, numbers of pets, size of pets, things like that. That has to be weighed against, for the home buyer, that has to be weighed against the fact that people really do. Pets are important in people's lives.
Sure, absolutely. It's like another child.
Absolutely. Some people would rather have a dog than a child. Dogs are more manageable, usually.
Having had both, I'm not going to say anything.
Sometimes, but.
What about age-restricted communities? Are they prevalent in this area?
Very popular.
Very
popular. They become more and more popular again as the population has become more gray. Many more neighborhoods have been built that restrict to 55 or better.
Is it always 55? Can it be 65, or is that just closing the market even more?
Could be higher. That may change. That very possibly may change, but 55 has been the standard and the norm for neighborhoods that are restricted by age.
That means that any child within that family has to be, well, I shouldn't say 55, but I mean, are they allowed to have, let's say a couple of 60, but they still have a child that's 25 or 30 that goes back and forth?
They do restrict school-age children in some cases.
But an older child is permitted, as long as the owners of the place are older than 55?
In most cases.
I see.
In most cases.
So I guess it runs the gamut of all different kinds of styles, all different kinds of rules and regulations, and that's part of your job, I would imagine.
Now, to throw the ball back into your court.
All right.
Could you speak to any particular styles of homes that tend to be more energy efficient than others? Is there
To be honest with you, the most important thing in a house is not so much its style, but its orientation. Siding the building was always a particular, how should I say, thing that I always looked for.
Is that part of what they call feng shui?
Yes and no. Feng shui is an oriental way of looking at not only buildings, but inside buildings, but you're right, in many respects it is siding the building. But a lot of feng shui is really common sense that everybody or every architect should know or is taught at school even before feng shui became popular. Anyway, siding the building, obviously facing most windows to the south, proper orientation to east and west and north and all that, amount of glass, all of the, so back to your question is no. There is no one style that is more efficient than another. Flat roofs in this area, even though they are synonymous with contemporary or modern architecture, are not very energy efficient, simply because they do not shed the snow or the ice very easily, so there needs to be mechanical means of removing that, or a lot of money spent in trying to double roof it and everything else. So I would say a flat roof contemporary is not very energy efficient normally, although falling water was, and everybody probably knows what I mean when I say falling water, was very energy efficient because of its siding of the building, and it was flat roofed, but many flat roofs, but a lot of interesting ideas the man had. But anyway.
Yeah, I would say in this area probably maybe as little, maybe even smaller a percentage than 1% of homes in Fairfield County have flat roof.
Very few.
Very rare.
Very rare. You're absolutely right. Let's see, what else as far as design is concerned? I mentioned siding, and clearly vegetation and landscaping is very important, both for energy, for the house, the cooling and the heating of the house. Clearly some deciduous trees along the south facade, which shed their leaves in the wintertime to allow the winter sun to come in and then block the sun in the summertime, are usually important. So it's not only the house design, but also the vegetation and the landscaping around it.
Do things like awnings help out?
Absolutely, they do. Absolutely, but they have to be the right kind of awnings. A lot of things are misnomers. Stated, you put an awning, automatically it's going to help. That's not always the case. I mean, yeah, it'll probably block the sun glare and what have you, but oftentimes it doesn't do what you really need to do because it's not low enough or whatever, what have you. So you have to look at things.
I have a deck on one of my homes that I own that protrudes out over a slider that faces south. And I don't think anybody planned it that way, but as it turns out, and I noticed it when we bought the property brand new, that in the winter time when the sun hangs low in the sky, travels a lower path, the light travels under the deck and heats the room up wonderfully.
Absolutely.
Now in the summertime, when the sun is higher in the sky, the deck catches that sunlight and acts like an awning in a sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is a plus automatically, especially if you're in the south-facing or west-facing. West-facing is even many times worse because of very, very low sun. Granted, it's not the hot, hot sun that the south and the high noon will be, but the west sun in the afternoon can be extremely warm, extremely hot. Well, it looks like we're coming to the end of a show. It was very, very interesting show. I would love to continue this at another time, but we have a couple of more minutes, and in the last couple of minutes I'm going to ask one last question, or maybe two last questions, about what you think as a broker about how long it's going to take us to come out of the, let me call it, doldrums of this market, and how far do you think we will have lowered the typical home value in, say, Fairfield, let's say Danbury area?
I'm going to say the higher the price, the home or condominium, the longer it's going to take. The moderately priced properties, which really, in fact, in Fairfield County wide is anything under $800,000.
Is that right?
Depending upon where in Fairfield County, of course. But we're heading in that direction. We may have bottomed out, and in the last month or so, I'd say in the months of April and May, let's say, we had up until that point, we had a huge inventory. In higher priced homes, we're talking about a 3 or a 4 year inventory.
Whoa.
Which means that if if it's all by happenstance that your house is going to sell, it could take that long to sell.
Wow.
Not so, of course, in the smaller prices that are more affordable homes. But in the last couple of months, I've noticed that huge blocks of homes, a good percentage of what's on the market has gone into contract.
Okay, well, that's it for us, and we'll have another show on this topic. Hope to see you once again, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.